Today, we are lucky enough to be graced by the presence of Tara Lipinski. If you are around my age, or actually just even grew up watching figure skating in the Olympics, you know Tara Lipinski. I grew up watching her compete in the Olympics, and this is such a major moment for me to be able to talk to her, and of course to get to talk to her about motherhood, her motherhood journey, her fertility struggles. She's been so open about her entire fertility journey, and to be able to get to where she is today with a 7-month-old baby girl. We're going to talk all about that and what she's learned, what she wishes she's done differently, and what she wishes that she would have done sooner in her surrogacy journey. So we're going to go ahead and talk to Tara. I've literally been spending the whole day today and yesterday watching your, is it your podcast?
My podcast, yes. Yeah, it also has a video component.
Which I actually prefer, because I know this is terrible to say, but I feel like one of the last standing people in our age group that still likes to watch interviews and not listen to everything my ear.
Me too. You do too. Because you get to see if it's two people, the dynamic, you get to see facial expressions. It's
and
better.
Also just especially because you're talking about something that's so, raw and vulnerable, to be able to have the video component. And the odds are that people who are watching what you're discussing on your show, which is, again, such a vulnerable topic, are also wanting to benefit from feeling connected to you. So I feel like that's why with
you
this,
feel like you're there more.
Totally. Yeah. And then you also understand the raw emotion behind it, the struggle behind it, the challenges. Anyway, I thought that it was great. I mean, I think, you speak so well and eloquently about such a challenging and, for a lot of people, triggering subject. So let's just go back, because we're talking about fertility. We're talking about your journey to motherhood. Yes. Let's go back to when you chose to be open about this, or actually when you started even your fertility journey, because you were doing this before you even decided to share it publicly.
Right. Yes. I started my fertility journey back in 2018. And it really was because I was talking with a friend of mine who was very young, was actually younger than me at that point, and she was going through a very long battle of infertility, and she had to go through IVF, but was experiencing miscarriages. And she opened up to me about her story, and I just realized I had no idea about my fertility. I had no idea. I just thought, when I want to get pregnant, my husband and I will get pregnant and we'll just build a magical family.
Right.
And that's not how it goes. And I think that's a whole nother discussion, just the lack of education surrounding a woman's fertility, and, just understanding a fertility timeline as well, even though it's super discouraging. As you get older, your fertility declines. And I think I just grew up in a time where I would see every cover of a magazine and it would be like, oh, this celebrity got pregnant at 45. And I thought, well, that's cool. I met my husband later in life. I was 34 when I got married, and I wanted to have some time just to relax and enjoy the newlywed bliss, if you will, and travel and work. And I just put off the idea of a family till later, because I thought I kind of want to wait. And after my friend shared her story, I was thinking a little bit more, and I was like, I also have a job that's really hard to schedule around. I have to be at an Olympic Games for a month, every 2 years for a summer or winter Olympic Games. And I thought, okay, well, maybe what I should do is check out my fertility and go through the IVF process to freeze embryos, as I am getting older. And I was 36 at the time. And then we will have, I'm lucky enough, again, to be able to do that and have that insurance plan for us. Well, we went through the first round of IVF, and it just, from the very beginning, we just always fell into the 1%. We always fell into this rare category where it's just not working and we don't know why, and it's unexplained infertility. And then I just went on a roller coaster for 5 years of endometriosis, 2 surgeries there. I was under anesthesia 24 times in that 5-year span. I had 6 failed transfers. I had 4 miscarriages. I feel like they're like stats that I'm running off. 8 retrievals.
Wow.
So it was just a really long journey. And then we eventually moved on to surrogacy because we really couldn't figure out what the problem was, other than when we eventually tested for immunology, reproductive immunology testing. That's where the first, negative red flag popped up, where essentially the plan would have been at that point to do a very heavy steroid immune protocol. This is getting in the weeds, but, doing IVIG treatments, which is this moving into this whole other phase where I had been through so much. And it was after my 4th miscarriage and we got these results. And it essentially was like Todd and I, as my husband, and, our HLA, our genetics just are so mismatched that my body sees my genetics, accepts the pregnancy, but it's never strong enough and it sort of rejects the pregnancy at some point. So
Wow.
we would have made a choice to then go down this other protocol, which I just was too tired for. The 4th miscarriage really was rock bottom for me. And I just was so ready at that point to move to surrogacy. So sorry, that's so long. I feel like I answered a 10-minute answer there. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's so wild when you like go back and you reflect on, what you have been through to get to be a mother. Like
I know.
It's so much emotional, physical, mental. There's just so much that goes into the entire thing. And then of course so many people's relationships are impacted. It's incredibly financially draining for people. Mm-hmm. It's also, I've heard people say that the IVF process, and I think you said this as well, is like a full-time job. Like there's so much that goes into this. We've had close family friends do IVF and it's like they need to leave dinner at a certain time to make sure they're home. They have to be, at home around at a certain, so it is such a big undertaking. And it sounds like when you decided to have kids and want to explore that journey, you guys went to go right to the IVF route, which is something that people tend to wait to do before they jump in because it is such a big undertaking. Was there a reason that you jumped right into that route?
Yeah, I never thought I would. And we did that just because, for a while I was just sitting with my friend's story where I just started to worry a little bit about my fertility. And you go to the OB and, I feel like that, I'd ask, but it'd be like, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. But you really have nothing on paper to give you evidence of that. So I just thought, why don't I go find out from an RE exactly where my fertility is at and then see if it's something they would suggest to bank embryos, especially if I wanted to have more than one child and I was already 36. So like I said, I just feel so lucky that I was in the position that I could take that step because like you said, emotionally, physically, financially, going through IVF is completely draining. And, but I was ready to take that step. And then I always thought, well, we could always try naturally, but at least we have this insurance. And we also know that, everything looks okay, I guess, in my mind is what I was hoping for with that first appointment.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think, how people look at, especially young women, you talk about like the fertility timeline, and it's so true. It's like you get to a certain age and then all of a sudden your doctor starts having different kinds of conversations with you. Like, do you want to have a family?
Right. How big?
Are you in a relationship with the person that you want to have? Like it becomes a whole different dialogue that so many people look at freezing their eggs at a young age as being, an insurance to be able to have, should they need to have that. So you guys jump right into the IVF journey. You're doing it, not publicly, you're doing it privately. And that's something that is incredibly isolating, whether you're hugely known or you're not, but especially, if you're not wanting people to find out about what you're doing, because it is so private, it is so personal. And also it's an emotional roller coaster. You're not sure what's going on with your body, why it's not working the way that you want it to work, and changes what you thought would have been your plan with your your husband. What was that like, that time frame before you decided to be open about your journey and you were doing it completely, in isolation and also experiencing just that isolating feeling of IVF?
Well, it was really hard, and I'm a super open person, just my personality. I overshare everything. I'm always, just like fine with people. Maybe it's because I grew up in the public eye from, 12 years old. But I've always felt very comfortable, and I obviously enjoy my privacy, but I feel like I was always really comfortable talking about things in my life. And this was one of them that I thought, oh, wow, when I did the IVF process, once I go through this, I'm going to share that I did this. I feel like it was a way that I could advocate for myself and be proactive, for someone in their mid to late 30s and thinking ahead. And what happened, though, was the first retrieval, we everything looked great. Like the retrieval went well, and we had 7 embryos we sent off for genetic testing. And I really thought, oh, great, we're going to have like 5 genetically normal embryos on ice. We're going to have 5 kids. We're walking away with this. Like, this was a win. I nailed it. And then they all came back genetically abnormal. And
Wow.
that was sort of, for 7 of them to come back like that, it was just a huge shock. And that was probably the first time when I got those results that I just panicked immediately, which probably I didn't need to. Once we talked to the doctor was like, look, we've learned a lot going through this. Like, she suspected I had endometriosis to begin with, but then the protocol really had to change around that. So that's why she believed we didn't have success with that round. But I just panicked. I just thought, it just makes you think for the first time that something that you think is guaranteed may not be. And this is a really big thing, especially if you have dreams of being a mother or building a family someday. So it really shook me to the core. And even just the one failure, because I just thought, what could be wrong? What are we missing here? It seems like everyone else goes through IVF and it kind of works. And that's also a misconception. Like, there's no guarantee with IVF. But anyways, I went on then to do another retrieval, and we did get normal embryos, and I thought, okay, we're good. Like, we're going to do one more just because we only got 2. And then I went through 2 failed retrievals, getting nothing. And at that point, I felt like, back to like why I didn't speak on it, is in the beginning, I was very open. I told all my friends, I told all my family, and then I was constantly giving them bad news. And I feel like that's when I really shut down. When that 3rd retrieval failed and the 4th retrieval failed, I just felt like, oh, I don't want to have to make this phone call again. I don't want someone to give me that. Like, it felt like pity. Like, they don't know what to say.
Right.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I felt like I went into like athlete mode where I couldn't handle having outside noise. I had to put my blinders on and just dedicate, like you said, the commitment is real, dedicate my entire day, every day, my emotional, my physical,
Wow.
how I was living, my lifestyle, everything to IVF. And it was also hard because then right after that, my doctor wanted me to do an endo surgery, and we moved on to other problems, but we naturally got pregnant the very first time we tried. And that was the very first pregnancy I'd lost right as COVID hit that summer. And it was
Oh my
even
gosh.
more isolating.
Yeah.
And at that point, I hadn't told anyone that we were, what we were doing. So then I just kept that secret for like with most of my close friends for months. And it was, I think I just needed to do that at the time. But looking back, it was just, my life completely changed. It just was, I was stuck at home with all of these emotions that I really didn't feel capable of handling and or knowing what to do with. But anyway, fast forward many years, I just got tired of hiding it. I got tired of, just thinking, oh, next time it's going to work, and then I'll tell everyone and it will be behind us. It just wasn't working. And I felt so alone. And I found this, like, the thing that got me through is I made up a fake account on Instagram, and I followed all of these people in, the infertility community. And that is where I found solace. That's where I found inspiration or hope or anything, just to follow these people on a similar journey. And I just felt like if I tell my story, then maybe that's, giving someone else something to hold on to. But yeah, it took me a long time. So it wasn't like I was just this brave person that was going to share my journey. It took me almost 5 years to get to that point.
Just to go back to your experience with like having to share or wanting to share and then sharing and having this letdown. I remember my close friends, she was able to get pregnant and kept miscarrying, and she was doing all of these IVF treatments and these transfers, and she ended up like completely going silent. And because I, have interviewed so many people about this, I was like, I'm not going to ask what she's doing. I know she wants to try to have a family. I'm not going to ask, because it seems like everybody always asks at like the worst time possible. And then it's always awkward and uncomfortable and, makes somebody feel bad. But this idea of like this mind shift that's so interesting of you're sitting there as the person who's trying to have a baby and trying to get into your dream of motherhood, and you don't want to hurt those around you or have to explain yourself or explain what had happened. And of course, people around you, of course, I'm sure say, we want to be there for you. We want to support you. We want to encourage you. We want to help you. But at the same time, you're like, I don't want to leave you guys feeling disappointed all the time. Was that like a weird mental shift you had to make of, and I'm sure being a professional athlete and having all of your experience being, competing and also traveling and having that in your background helped shift your mind to just focusing on you. But was that like a emotional shift for you that was really hard, or was it not that hard?
No, it was hard. I mean, I feel like it's interesting because obviously I stopped competing a long time ago and have moved on to, a different career in broadcasting now that didn't relate to this. But my skating career, I found myself dropping back into all of those habits or all of those ways, maybe because it was just so high stakes and high stress that's very similar to what, you're experiencing in an infertility battle. But I definitely just knew the way that I had to handle it was to put on those blinders. I don't think that I could have handled the outside noise and then still have dealt with my day-to-day life. It was just such a struggle for me to continue. And it was really hard. Like you said, I felt like in the beginning you share all of this and people always don't know what to say, but there's hope. Like everyone wants to be positive. Like next time it will work. But after a while, and even my friends got to that point where they don't know what to say because they're not going to say next time it will work because the last 4 times didn't work, Right. So you get into this weird position where I almost felt bad. I would get on the phone and preface. I'd be like, I'm still so grateful for so many things that, like I had this thing that I would like say, but it didn't work. And it just was hard. And I think sometimes too, because this is still a little bit of a taboo subject. Of course, we know women have miscarriages, but I think there's still so much shame surrounding it that you don't feel so comfortable opening up and telling all of your friends about this. It is still just this little bit of a hit to your ego. But beyond that, I think people don't really know how to be there for you. Really, what is the protocol? Is it positivity? Is it, giving advice? It's definitely not giving advice from experience. You have a doctor, and I think a lot of people do that. It's like, oh, I had a friend who did IVF and then they naturally got pregnant after. Right. And you're just like, oh my God, I'm so deep in this. Yeah. And you want, you don't want to be like, that's not the right thing to say, but you definitely, that's why it's so isolating because your world just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the only person that I really felt like I had was of course, my immediate family, but it was like Todd. Todd was the only one who truly understood what we were going through.
And even then it's like, your husband can understand, but also there's a different level of, as a woman, you are going through, as you said, this shame aspect, which we've talked a lot about on BDA Baby, that, you know, whether it's your inability to get pregnant right away, if it's a long struggle to get pregnant, if it's challenges with birth, breastfeeding, it's like this shame of like, my body's not doing what it's supposed to do, that as a woman you sit with and becomes even more isolating, especially when you feel like you don't want to share it with certain people. I'm curious if like you think, looking back, if your history, you know, skating and your career skating and your mentality to be, you know, competing at that level helped you in your fertility journey, like that mentality? Did that
Well, it's
kick
so
in?
interesting. I think about that a lot. I think the mentality did. I think, unfortunately, what was really hard was that, you know, as a skater, my body worked for me for so many years. It was it was formulaic, it was strategic. There was just this plan. You work hard, you work harder, and you get more success. The harder you work, the more you'll get out of it. And I just feel like immediately that's what I did when I started hitting, you know, I was like, okay, so I will change my lifestyle. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to not work out anymore. I'm going to, you know, change everything from plastic to glass. And,
Right.
you know, you almost get desperate because your body's really in control, obviously. So you don't have that control, but you try to find it in all these places. So I feel like I went back to my athlete, especially in the beginning of my athlete mode of like restriction and training and hardcore. This is the Olympics. Like, you have to train for this. And then I, you know, very soon after that realized, oh, no matter what I do, this is a medical diagnosis. This is not something that I can control. So I had to learn how to let that go, which is really not my personality. So I feel like I've learned a lot through this journey of acceptance and sort of living in more of the feminine aspect of my life. But I will say the mentality of being an athlete, of all of those, you know, lessons you learn as a young athlete of discipline and resilience. And I mean, skating literally is falling and getting back up. So I feel like I was used to that. You know, I would hit the failure. I would feel all these emotions. I would say, I'm never doing this again. I'd pity myself and cry in the couch for 2 weeks. But then the same feeling that I always got after a bad competition, where I just knew like, okay, I'm going to get back up, you know, dust myself off, call the clinic, and we'll do it again. So I feel like that definitely helped me. I do believe that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were doing a full fertility Olympics, you know,
Exactly.
of just like getting
Truthfully.
into the zone. And also, you know, the main difference I feel like for you would have been the fact that like you had your mentality that worked really well for you as an individual person, but then now you were in something that was involving you, but also your husband. And it's something that, you know, I've talked to so many people in my life about, just if it's you're an IVF journey, if it's someone struggling with endometriosis, miscarriage, the toll it takes on people's relationships, especially if it's a long road. Yours, you know, was 5 years, which is a long road. It's, you know, it's really draining and straining on the relationship, not only financially, but mentally, physically, emotionally. Someone goes off on a different page than another person. So how did you guys stay? I mean, you guys seem like you're really connected and open and honest with one another, but was there anything for people who are experiencing it or about to experience that you would say helped you and Todd?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and we talked a lot about it on the podcast, and I think the podcast was very healing for us because there were so many things that we didn't talk
therapy.
about. It was therapy. And there's so many things we didn't talk about at the time, or things at the time that were a bit difficult for us to communicate through, that we just pushed under the rug just to keep going. And then we sort of reopened all of these like little packages during the podcast. And it was like therapy for us. But it was it was definitely trying for the first, I'd say 2 to 3 years, you know, maybe 2 years till we really found a rhythm that worked. Just because we have different ways of dealing with, I mean, it's like any partnership really, right? Like we are opposites attract. He's like so chill and everything's going to be fine. And I am like the type A worry wart. Like that is,
Yeah. So that's exactly the relationship my husband and I have. He's like,
yes.
it's all good. I'm like,
It's like,
how?
oh, yeah, exactly. I'm like, have you thought of these 6 other scenarios or variables or,
Spiraling.
Yes.
Have you not spiraled before? How is that possible?
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like we had to really work through that because, it's hard when you're going through this. You're putting so much on the line every time. And then, Todd would be like, don't worry. The doctor says it's fine. It's going to work out. Like, why are you so stressed? And I'd be like, oh, like, well, clearly we've been doing this for a year and it's not working.
Right.
And so we really had to talk through, because we had a lot of bumps in the road when it came to how to be there for each other, because, he didn't know that I really just needed someone who's going to talk me through it, who's going to understand all those worries and fears. And I also needed to understand that, our life changed so dramatically. We didn't travel. I mean, obviously it was COVID, but we also didn't travel. These appointments just took over our life. I was having him on like supplements and diets, and we weren't, like a date night and I'd be like, you can't have that wine, so like our life just became about fertility. And I think that was really hard for him because we lost a lot of fun and we lost a lot of just, focus on us. So it took a bit, but then, we just got to the point somehow, and I think I hear a lot of people going through couples therapy when they're doing IVF. And I think that's probably like a direct way to really find a way to like open up those lines of communication. Somehow we found it on our own, thank goodness, but we just needed to really go through it. And for me to say like, hey, no, I'm going to need you to do this instead of this because I cope this way and you cope that way. So it's really just understanding. I mean, it's like anything, right? Like grief or loss, like everyone deals with these things so differently.
You hear so many people who say that exact thing of like, oh, we lost ourselves in the fertility journey. Like, it took over our lives. Everything was revolving around fertility. And it's, for couples who are either in the thick of it or even, anticipating going through that, it's kind of like, what do you do to not have that or lose that fun, as you're saying, when you're talking about something that there's so much focus and pressure put on, and of course, rightfully so, but it's how do you not lose each other in that journey? And it sounds like communication is
for me, it was definitely communication. It was also just, I think I learned a lot about myself, and Todd did too. We talk about those things we learned on the podcast. But like I said, I feel like I've always just been so driven. And so let me get the job done. And I realized this was taking up such a huge part of our life that I didn't want to get the job done and then we wouldn't be there anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, I was always able to have perspective of the things that I was grateful for that I had, like that I was able to even continue to try and have these opportunities, hope that our health, our family, our marriage, trying to keep those, that perspective. But I think that, we infuse a lot of humor. It was kind of dark humor, I think, around everything.
The best kind.
But we kept that going. So it was like, as crappy as things would get, we could laugh about how crappy they were or how ridiculous some of these things were. I mean, we have like crazy stories that we tell on the podcast, but it's, and also what's sad is when it takes up so much of your life. Right. There's so many moments that you don't think about this ahead of time, but I had a D&C on our anniversary. I had a miscarriage on my birthday. Every Mother's Day would be, like we had 2 transfers on a Mother's. Like it was just all these moments that, of course, they're just Hallmark holidays or special days. But you start to realize, oh, my goodness, if I look back, like these days, these memories have like, when was the last time we had a holiday that didn't involve, sadness because a transfer didn't work or, so I feel like we had to really find ways to and it's really hard because it's a medical diagnosis. It's something that is happening to your body and it's scary. And it's sometimes we couldn't find a way to distract ourselves or find us or do a fun date night, and that was okay. But I think we did try to laugh through it and try to find those moments of happiness. I remember another birthday, I had a DNC and an endo surgery on 2 days before it. And, we were like, this is going to be so depressing, and we had to go to San Francisco for the surgery. And afterwards, he's like, screw it. We're driving to Napa. We're going. And I was like, my doctor's gonna be like, I was like wine tasting 2 days after and sometimes you just have to like work through it. And we were just kind of laughing at how, crazy our life was in this moment. But just trying to find those little unexpected times where you could just detach from it or not talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and also such great advice to give to people who are nervous about that kind of part of it. So to fast forward, you choose the surrogacy route. Mm-hmm. Surrogacy is such a beautiful and amazing gift and thing to be able to do. And also it can be nerve-wracking for someone, who might not have thought, oh, I'm going to go down the surrogacy route. What's that going to look like? Am I, I'm not the person carrying the baby, but it's still my baby. How is that going to go for me? Your daughter is now 7.5 months old, which is incredible. How has that been for you in like the process of, because you hear so many people now talk very openly about surrogacy, like they had a surrogate, they talk about surrogates, they talk about, not feeling as connected or some feeling overly connected. Mm-hmm. Was that something that you thought about when making the decision to go the surrogacy route? Was that an anxiety for you, mm-hmm. or how was that?
Yeah, I think that I definitely, I never thought that this was going to be the way that we would build a family, right. And I think it's okay to be honest with, yes, I would have loved that it just all worked out and I was able to carry the pregnancy. But you get to a certain point where I really realized my only regret throughout 5 years, which is crazy because at the beginning I would have fought and been like, I don't need a surrogate. I will figure it out. But my only regret really is that I waited so long to choose surrogacy. I feel like what we were talking about with, partnership and your marriage, I wish that I did it 2 years earlier. Because all of those fears, all of those anxieties never came to fruition. They never actually happened.
You mean when it comes to the surrogacy, that part of it?
Right. Whereas like, will I feel connected? Will this feel strange? All of these things. And I never realized that, and maybe it's just, everyone's different. You have to go on this journey to get to this point. But it was beautiful. And what's so interesting now is, like I said, there's still like this possibility that if I wanted to try a different protocol, I could. And so I thought my surrogate's name's Michaela, we're so close. She's family now. And so when I said to Michaela, I was like, you're going to go into the hospital. We're going to deliver Georgie. And I think I'm going to watch that and feel so sad that I couldn't, that was my biggest fear, that I couldn't do it myself. And that, you know what, we had to do it like this time, but then I'm going to try on my own. This is going to fuel me maybe to try on my own. And the craziest thing is I came home, and Todd laughs about this to this day. I came home. That wasn't even a thought in my mind. I was crying for like, as if all the hormones were going crazy me. I was so emotional. So there is definitely some transfer of something. Obviously,
I'm sure,
what's happening is emotional, but still, it definitely was like hormones all over. But I was crying because I was so sad my pregnancy with Michaela was over. Like I was calling her and
interesting.
Yes, I was like, we were such teammates. Every day was about the pregnancy. Every day was, and it was also really special because I've been through 4 pregnancies. So I do know, what it's like, what it feels like. And, like Todd, obviously interested and loves the appointments, but I had this woman who was like, we talked about it all day long about all the things. And, it just felt so special and that we achieved this together. And there was so much sadness. Like, of course, now I look back and I'm like, of course I'm sad. But I was unhinged for like a few days, like just crying at the thought that it was over. It was like, when you leave your wedding and you have like wedding blues, I had like surrogacy pregnancy blues where I was like,
Wow.
no, don't yet. So I think if I always tell that story because I think that is the most telling of how unexpected this journey was for me, because that was not what I thought it would feel like. And I was worried about connection, and I was worried about all of these things that go along with surrogacy. But for me, it really was such a different experience.
Was there something that you did throughout your surrogacy journey? Because it's a unique relationship, right? It's not like this woman is just like your friend by chance. Like she's somebody that's carrying your baby that is, going to communicate with you because of that. And you guys grow close because you have this common bond of growing your baby. Is there something that you feel like looking back that you did that you would tell somebody, like, make sure you go to all the appointments, or make sure you buy them groceries, or like to stay connected? Because I think it is something I'm sure people worry about. Like, first of all, it's a release of control because someone else is carrying your baby. But then also, like, what if you don't click?
So I think that, I was able to tell her my story. I was able to be very vulnerable with a stranger. And that immediately, I think, almost catches you off guard a bit, right? So all of a sudden your relationship is fast forwarded. This is not just meeting someone for coffee. This is like getting to know, someone's entire life and their deepest, darkest fears about, building a family, and that they are now jumping into this process with you. Mm-hmm. So I feel like for me, I really wanted to be as open as possible. I wanted to really explain what I was hoping for out of the journey. I wanted to explain who I thought she should expect on this journey when it came to me and my personality, and also what she wanted, because that was really important to me, because I just sort of knew, like any relationship, there has to be, compatibility. There has to be being on the same page of what you want out of this. And I think for Michaela and for me, like our wish lists just aligned immediately. And that's why I really feel like it just felt like teammates from the start. And I was able to tell her from that story, look, I have a lot of fears about this, like, just, all the worries that you can't obviously control since you're not carrying the baby on your own. She was so open and willing to sort of take me through that journey and be that person to say, like, do not worry, I've got you. Like, for example, she kind of knew that, for me, if I was pregnant, I would be worrying about every single thing that went on my body or in my body. And so she would be like, hey, like, it's summertime, I'm getting a sunscreen, which one would you like me to get? Or I'm trying a new shampoo, which shampoo would you like me to get? And
wow.
She would just reach out random. And then what I would love to do is just spoil her, like I would just love to send little surprises and, anything that would make her feel better physically, emotionally on this journey. So we really were able to take care of each other. And, she was able to heal so many parts of me throughout this process, because I had so much, I think, PTSD from pregnancy. So when you ask about the appointments, I think a lot of people going into this without so much baggage, want to be there. I struggled. I was terrified of appointments. I started to get myself so upset a day or two before. I couldn't eat. I lost 10 pounds the first 2 weeks after Michaela's transfer. Like, that's how, I just had so much baggage from everything we had been through. So we had plans. She would always go into the room, and she would make sure that she got the baby's heartbeat up so that I knew that then I could jump on, so I didn't have to go through any of, that again. So she just knew how to take care of me. And I feel like I hopefully knew how to take care of her on this journey together. And it just, I always say this and it's awful, but pregnancy for myself was, obviously very traumatic. And then even going through it after so much loss, it wasn't particularly fun or exciting for me. There was just
Right.
still a lot of anxiety, always waiting for that shoe to drop, then getting good news and just not even knowing how to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
After so much bad news for so long, but she made it as enjoyable as it could have been for me. And yeah, so I would just say be honest about what you're seeking out of this relationship. And, if you want a friendship, any friendship, you got to share, you got to be vulnerable and be truthful and honest and just kind of lay it on the line.
Are you guys still close now that your daughter is 7 months old
Yes.
and she's out? So you guys are still, you have a friendship.
Yes, we are so close, and it just feels like one of those. It's like we always joke. It's just like I will always. She doesn't live in Los Angeles, but I will always be there for her, and vice versa. And that's sort of how we like end every text message or phone call of just her family, Michaela. Like I've got them for life. Like, and I feel like
Aw.
she's always like that. She's like, "What do you need?" Like I'm here, and we wanted to go through a second. We're starting a second surrogacy journey, and
Oh,
we
you
really
are?
wanted to go through that together again, but there was a bit of a medical issue where she's not going to be able to with us, and she's still, we have a little like, we know that it's not going to be together, but it's still like we still have a little bit of that teammate thing. She's like, I got you. Like one of the surrogates that we're talking to now is in Idaho where she lives, and she's like, I'm just gonna roll up and say hi, just check in on her. So we're still like joking and laughing, and she's still able to hopefully be part of our life forever. I mean, she's an angel.
Do you think that that's something that you're like, have you thought about how you explain that to your daughter? I mean, we live in a world now where I feel like that's so much more normalized now of being able to have those kinds of conversations, but is that something that you have anxiety about, or you feel good because you're good with Michaela?
There's been a few hiccups. The first round was so smooth, and this time it's just sometimes hard. It's hard to find the right match. It's hard to then, if you do find the right match, maybe there's something during medical clearance that there's a problem and you can't use that surrogate. So we have been going on that journey. We think we're close now. And yeah, I think I'm really ready for this second round, this second pregnancy, to maybe relax a little bit more and to enjoy those moments that the first time around, I just felt like I had so many other emotions. It was hard to really live in that moment. I really felt the first time around like I did not breathe. Like my husband has a video. He was standing in the behind me when Georgie was being born, and I was with Michaela, and it looks like I was like dry heaving, crying nonstop, because the moment I heard her voice, I think it was so much relief. Obviously it was so beautiful, right? She's coming into this world, but I think the true emotion was just this guttural, like, just years of desperation.
Yeah.
Just coming out of me of relief. Like, oh my gosh, we actually finally did it. Now I can breathe. So I do hope that the second round I'm able to, enjoy some of the scans and the moments that, many people enjoy during pregnancy.
Yeah. I mean, I think I love this idea that you said of like her being born and the journey of surrogacy being a healing journey for you.
Yes.
I think that it's so beautifully put, and not something that I think people might think of when going through their fertility struggle and, choosing whether or not they're going to go down the surrogacy route. It's like looking at this as like, a healing moment for you. And it sounds like what her birth was for you was just like this huge sigh of 5 years of just like,
relief.
Yeah.
It really was. It is the way you put that. It was so healing. I think for so many people, you fight so hard, and I was fighting for it for so long and so hard, and just so stubborn that I was going to figure this out somehow. And I didn't even realize while I was doing this, I was never enjoying the pregnancy. I was hanging on to so much anxiety and so much trauma, that finally separating and almost having this completely different experience allowed me to finally focus on myself a little bit and heal and be ready for when my daughter did arrive.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful way to put it that I've actually never heard. I mean, I've been talking to people about fertility and surrogacy, and just having that shift, I think, is really beautiful and encouraging for a lot of people. You're 7.5 months into motherhood. What has it been like for you? Has there been anything that has been like a huge, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is never what I expected, or life lesson that you've had so far? I know it's early, but what's it been like?
It's really been amazing. I mean, motherhood is hard, right? It's so hard. And until you do it, you don't realize exactly what's so hard about it. But then you very quickly realize that, your life has changed forever in this moment. But for me, I think I had been thinking about this moment for so long that, I'm almost never glad to have gone through what I did, but I do think it really prepared me. It really got me ready for motherhood and all of its challenges. And, every parent, whether you go through, fertility issues or not, you're so grateful and, so in love with this child. But for what Todd and I always talk about is there's almost this moment, though, that we both have of when something's going terribly wrong, and it's just like poop everywhere, or like just whatever it is, right? Like on a plane, it's just like, the worst case, funniest scenario of what could happen. I find myself almost like giddy, like laughing, like this was the moment I was waiting for. Not the sweet, like I'm so in love with like the baby pictures. It's like the hardest moments that I thought about, that I wanted. I'm experiencing them now. And it doesn't mean that I'm not tired and exhausted and it's not hard, but I just think there really is something that it's not like I ever miss a beat. It's every time something's really hard, I immediately almost have this like little movie that goes through my head of getting here and just seeing this breathing, crying child, whatever she's doing. I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been waiting for. So I do really appreciate, I think that journey helped with those moments. Where I just really am soaking it all in and not, sometimes in my life I'm like, oh, wow, I really rushed through that. I'm not really present. I'm not really taking it in. And this really has stopped me down to do that.
I think being present, everybody always tells you in motherhood, it goes by so fast, be present. And then you have these moments where, the baby's sick or you're exhausted or, just like things aren't going the way that you maybe thought that they would, or you're sleep deprived. And then to be able to have that visual of like being overly exhausted or just like what is going on, and then be like, wait a second, this is what you've always called your fertility journey hell. This is like what your hell was to get to this place through the beauty of it and also the hard times. I think that's such a beautiful way to put it.
We really just are soaking it all in. And I think that, we talked about the partnership too. That's another thing Todd and I feel now. It's, looking back, reflecting back. Yes, it's so hard. Your life is torn apart, but in a weird way, we feel closer than ever because we have gone through something so crazy that really the two of us only really know, right? Like really know those feelings. So it feels like we have this extra special thing that we've strengthened us or brought us together, or even around Georgie. I think we just feel it sometimes when it was, it's Easter and we're just like looking, and I think we're just both like, we dreamt of this. Like, how did this happen? We did this together. Like, we fought through this. And there's always those cute moments of bonding, where I feel like Todd he'll always tell Georgie how hard mommy fought to have you, and it's just like these sweet moments now that I think we can, reflect back on how hard it was, but, it almost feels sweeter now.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful that you are so open with your whole journey, and to know that you're doing this again, because it was such a positive experience for you. And, that, I'm hoping that you guys are close in that journey, because it sounds like you are just loving motherhood and excited to add to your family. So congratulations. Being open is such a it's a scary thing, but I think it just helps so many people. And I'm sure you have an endless amount of people who come up to you and say, like, thank you for being open. Thank you for sharing. But it's also very scary for, the person that's in your situation to be so vulnerable. So thank you for taking time and for chatting with us. And
yes,
congratulations.
Thank you. This was so fun.
So fun. Thank you. Okay, well, that episode was officially retitled Fertility Olympics. I loved everything that she had to say about her fertility journey, about her struggles, about her surrogacy experience, and about her now motherhood journey. This is such an amazing conversation. I also just feel like looking at her surrogacy experience as a healing journey for her personally, and then being able to be blessed with such a beautiful baby is such a new thing that I hadn't heard before. So I'm so grateful for Tara Lipinski for taking the time today and for sharing such a personal journey and for being so open about it and putting such good out into the world for those who might be finding themselves in a similar situation. So thank you.